Hello, everybody, and thank you for joining me today. It's Allan Laboucan with the Rocks and Stocks News Show, and got an exciting guest today and a milestone event for them as they start transition from a junior or a private company into a publicly traded company. And I've mentioned that I've never in my 30 years in the business seen a company that is as well prepared as a private company to become a public company. For me, it always starts with project. And due to the quality of the project, the company has attracted a stellar board of directors, a great management team, and two mining legendary investors in Eric Sprott and Rob McEwen as key shareholders. And so I'm really happy to talk to Kelly and Ian today. Kelly, Malcolm, thank you very much for joining us.
Thanks, buddy. Big day. TSXV, BoGo.
BoGo.
It's been a really long time, and we've talked for I don't know 6-8 months about the story, but finally public as of 9:30 a.m. this morning. So really excited. Lots of people anticipating this listing. As you mentioned, we've got a lot of big hitter shareholders that have been bugging me to to get public. So now that we're there, really excited to see how the market goes, but I anticipate it's going to go quite well going forward because Ian's been doing a great job on the ground. Um, Hopefully finding some really nice stuff by the drill bit. We've got some production stuff on the go, so I think there's lots of news that will really excite people once they read it.
You picked a great stock symbol as well, BOGO, or as we like to call it, BOGO.
Oh, go.
So, Kelly, project. You know, this, when I started doing my homework, there was a few key things that stood out to me. One was a extremely large alteration zone of 20 square miles. Folks, there's a saying in the business because it's often accurate, is accurate. Big deposits leave big footprints. And when you have one of the largest alteration zones in all of Nevada, that is a big footprint because the fluids that come up to the surface, when they interact with the country rock, they alter that rock. And having a 20 square kilometer package is extremely impressive. Then I did more homework and I read a research paper that talked about the similarities to the Yanacocha mine, which is South America's best gold mine. And so right away, I went to Google Earth and I looked at Yanacocha and I could see a big alteration package, a series of pits. And right away, I looked at the dimensions of it, which would fit beautifully in the alteration package at Borealis. And then another key thing from that paper was that right beside and just underneath your biggest, highest grade pit that from historically mined on the property, you had very high grade gold hits just below in the sulfides. And Yanacocha again, they've mined out the oxides, and now they're transitioning it to the sulfide. So, you know, that's I think a key, some of the key things that excites me about the project, Kelly.
Sorry, I had you on mute because my nephew's in the back screaming.
No,
I totally agree, Alan. It's a big footprint. There's beautiful historical grades. Like you mentioned, that Freedom Flats pit was Ian 5 grams almost oxide, I believe.
Yeah, it was
Um,
five grams. Yeah.
it's spectacular, and that's oxide at surface. And really, Ian's the one to speak to the alteration. He's walked most of the property at this point after being here for a year, um, and looking at a bunch of old drill core and compiling the data set, doing the modeling. So I would put it over to Ian to speak to that more than I. Oh, never mind.
before we go into that, Kelly, let's talk about the people that are involved because you got a fantastic board of directors, a really strong management team. You got Eric Sprott in as a big investor, and Rob McEwen is your largest investor. And these guys have made their fortunes in the mining, investing in mining. So let's talk about the people, and then we'll get into the project.
Sure, of course. So yeah, we have great friends, I guess. We've surrounded ourselves with exceptional people, like you mentioned, mining industry legends like Tony, our chair, built and sold Kirkland Lake Gold, as well as Lakeshore Gold prior to that. Bob Buchan founded Kinross Gold. Rich Patricio co-founded Next Gen Energy and is on the board there still. Greg Gibson founded and sold Trelawney Mining to I Am Gold, which is now their flagship asset, Cote Lake. And Christina McCarthy just did the same with Paycore Minerals. So these are serial value creators, but also serial exit generators with significant returns for shareholders. And then obviously Rob McEwen and Eric Sprott are the veterans. They're the guys that have done it all in this industry. They've made and lost more money than I probably can ever imagine
Well,
seeing in my life.
made a lot more than they lost, those guys.
Of course, well, I'm sure they've had pretty big losses too, but overall, they've absolutely won in this industry. And our team is really solid. So this is the first time that your audience would have met Ian, but Ian and I were we worked together at Detour Gold for a number of years. We actually were roommates at one point, university in Sudbury. And he went on to have an amazing career with Kirkland Lake, then Agnico Eagle. Andreas Steckenborn, your audience has met once. Same thing, we met at Detour Lake, and then he went on to start a consultancy and has done very well there, working at some very big mines. And myself with Amex exploration for the past 5 years, and I've dabbled quite a bit in the junior game on top of that as well. So yeah, amazing people and really great funds, really great high net worth shareholders. Like we've got a very tight share structure with some really good supporters there, Allan.
Well, I know a little bit about Rob McEwen getting involved. He's a good friend of the show, and I helped introduce him to the company, and I was quite impressed, Kelly, that we told him about the story, and within 2 days he had already decided that he wanted to take Waterton completely out of the stock and take their entire position, and we closed it within a week after that. So now instead of having Waterton that's closing down their fund and selling most of their stocks, you've got a guy that's a long-term value investor in mining, and he as your, I don't know, 17, 18%
Yep.
shareholder. So hell of a good guy to have on the team.
I popped some champagne after that deal closed, to tell you that.
You and me both. And Tony McCooch, my audience would know Tony because Lakeshore was an early pick of mine, and then that morphed into Kirkland Lake, and both were fantastic. So Tony knows how to build a company from scratch to big success. And he's giving you great advice, and Buckins is giving you great advice. So heck of a team, and it's all about the project. If you didn't have the project, Kelly, these guys don't invest in you because of our good looks.
Speak for yourself, Allan. I'm just kidding. No, of course, project related, obviously. Yeah, that's absolutely the paramount thing to these things, and business plan too. So both project that we have currently and the growth plan to grow it into one of these big companies that these guys have all built in the past. So a bit of both. I totally agree.
So we'll go to the project and then the business plan. How does that sound? Okay.
Great.
So Ian and I had a chat before we hit play or record, and again, I'll go back to the big picture. There you've got this 20 square mile alteration package. And in that alteration, you've got these cross-cutting faults, and they the pits. There's a series of pits that maybe makes up 10% of that alteration zone on one side of it, and they line up along a fault. And when it shows the potential of the alteration that's up on a ridge, plus those faults go down into the covered area right beside the ridge, and the best pit, Freedom Flats, is in that thinly covered covered area, right with a fault going through it. And so, Ian, did I summarize things good enough?
That sounded pretty good, Allan.
Yeah.
Yeah, that was good. Yeah, we have our northeast faults, which are the kind of the key conduits for the mineralization historically, and that's where the Freedom Flats pit, which is the highest grade pit, it was 250,000 ounces, I believe, between 86 and 91 when Echo Bay closed it up, reclaimed. And yeah, you have those parallel northeasters right across the entire land package from east to west. But you've also got north-northwest faults. You've got your east-northeast faults, your range front faults or down drop faults, which some people kind of think it could be, where that entire basin is kind of just down dropped, creating these conduits. And the Freedom Flats fault and the Graben deposit, which is just adjacent to it, there's several structures down there, not just those major faults. And it's where you have those intersections of structures where you have your best mineralization. And we've definitely tested the amount of structure there with our drilling campaign late last year into this year, where it's horrid drilling. It is so hard to drill in these areas, but I mean that's because of the structure, and where you have that bad drilling is where you're going to have your best mineralization. And added to that,
Nobody ever told us exploration was going to be easy, Ian, or everybody would have a gold mine.
Yeah, exactly. But on top of that, we also have a wealth of just data that has not been digitized. We've got geophysics data, we've got our log data. There's been a bunch of hyperspec and teraspec work on the project in the past that hasn't been compiled. And so that's one of my goals for 2024 is to have all this information, alteration, mineralization, structure, so loss sample and stuff like that are included. And then to bring that into 3D and actually do a model of the entire deposit, which has never been done before at the Borealis project. And the reason for doing that, having all of these data points, if you will, is that you can throw them all together and you can look at everything holistically, employ machine learning algorithms, look at current pits that have already been discovered on the land package, and then look for areas that most resemble that, develop targets from that, as well as in the pediment area. You can trace those faults using geophysics, using Google Earth, and also using obviously ground truthing out in the field to target these areas where we think we see these major faults, these major northeasters, intersection between faults, and that kind of stuff going into the pediment, and target those areas accordingly as well.
One of my favorite exploration tools is Google Earth. And it goes back to that statement about, big systems leave big footprints. And right away, as soon as Kelly started showing me the project, I could see the big alteration from Google Earth, 20 miles of alteration. And you can see those cross-cutting faults from Google Earth. When you can see it so easily, that's tremendously impressive. And what also is really impressive is in that Freedom Flats, that big pit that's just under the cover. You have grades. There was grades there that are like 10 times the average grade of what's being mined in open pits these days for oxide deposits.
There's still ounce material at the bottom of that pit. It's still oxide. It's crazy.
Holy,
It's insane. Yeah, and then you've got the graben right next to it, which is a deeper sulfide deposit.
yeah.
And I mean, you got a feeder underneath Freedom Flats, which has kind of been probed. There's kind of a feeder that has been probed underneath Borealis, but like very little exploration for these deep sulfide targets. But I mean, there's proof in the historical drilling that they are there. They've just not been drilled off. They haven't been explored for properly in the past because they were mainly looking for their for the oxide material back in the 80s and the 90s.
One thing that I'm always paying attention to, Ian, is the distribution of gold in a system. To get those kind of grades in the oxides, they've got to come from somewhere deeper.
Absolutely.
And to
Yeah.
get those kind of grades at the top of a system is pretty impressive when you consider the potential below where that gold came from deeper into the system. I mean, those are off the chart oxide numbers.
Oh yeah. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, gold's got to come from somewhere. You got to find that plumbing, and also with an epithermal system, there's a porphyry there somewhere, and we've seen anomalous copper grades in our geochem as well at Borealis, which is interesting. So yeah, it's down there somewhere.
Well,
And
you got my attention because you know, I live down here where there's a lot of in Mexico where there's a lot of high grade epithermal vein or epithermal systems that make up all the mining of silver down here, some of the gold, and so you got my attention there. But having said that about that big alteration package, Ian, it also blows me away that, you know, that could just be part of a much bigger system, which you have, which that Freedom Flats also gives you evidence of, because it's under thin cover, the oxides, but it's out into that covered area. And so you could replicate part of that big alteration that outcrops in the ridge down into the covered area.
but absolutely, like you look again, looking at Google Earth, just from kind of a bird's eye view, you can tell that structure goes underneath the pediment. And there's nobody's going to convince me that the only deposits on the Borealis deposit are the ones that just happen to daylight above the pediment. Just it defies logic.
Well, it's
So
already been shown the Freedom Flats is under that
exactly,
cover.
yeah,
And it was the best pit, the biggest pit, the highest grade pit.
yeah, and the highest sulfidation. So one could argue closest to
Heat
that
engine.
heater system, that porphyry. So it's down there somewhere, and the ultimate goal is to, yeah, again, compile the data that we already have. It's the cheapest way to do any kind of drilling is use the previous drilling, the previous information, and compile that into a usable, workable model. Use the geophysics, the terraspec, hyperspec, geochem, all that kind of stuff. Throw that into your 3D software and look at it. Go over it with a fine-tooth comb and look for those areas that have the best potential for future discovery, and go there and drill it.
Well, I really like what you're talking about there, Ian, because it reminds me of some a piece of advice my mentor in geology gave me a long time ago. He was a really brilliant guy, but he could bring things down to the essence. And he said, you know, a lot of projects, they start out big, you put the truth machine to them, and they get smaller. But the trend for what becomes a mine is they get better as you throw more science at it, and that's the trend you want to see. And you know, you're starting out with a lot of great evidence that this is a serious project.
Knowledge is power.
There you go. And you're going to throw all the science you can at it, Ian.
Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, that is the plan.
And well, thanks a lot for giving us that rundown, Ian. I'm going to get Kelly back on because we got to talk about the business plan. And I brought up one of the truth machines, which is a way to create value for a company with the drilling. But I call that the little truth machine. The big truth machine is getting that gold out of that rock and pouring gold. And I call that the mine is the big truth machine. And there's very few juniors that can employ both of the truth machine, the little one and the big one. And you're coming out of the gate, Kelly, being able to do that. So let's talk about your work with your two truth machines on the property.
Sure. So one of the cool things we haven't even talked about is we're actually permitted to even go underground to that sulfide deposit tomorrow if we wanted to, and go bulk sample that for I think 10,000 tons. So we could employ the truth machine in a number of ways. We know that this mine is a profitable mine, even though it's had a bit of a scarred past over the last little bit with the previous operator, then Waterton. But through the 80s, this was a cash cow, and I think it was on an interview with you, Allan, where Andreas mentioned that at one point in the 80s, when the Freedom Flats mine was in full swing, Borealis was one of the lowest cost operators in North America for albeit a short portion of time. But there is plenty of room to make plenty of money, and we are looking. I've
You're
mentioned
making me
before.
think another of my sayings. The best place to look for a free cash flow machine of a mine is right beside one. And here it's not
Exactly.
way off in the shadows. It's
It's right there.
literally in the shadows.
Yeah, so we've got a really, like I said at the beginning, we've got a really smart mining team involved in the company, and we're looking for margin. So we're not looking to do something just to mine. Andreas actually brought up a really cool point that I didn't really think about when I look at companies. Is look at the difference between your cutoff grade and your ore grade. If it's 0.1 of a gram, if you're mining 0.4 gram, zero point 0.4 gram cutoff, 0.5 gram material, you're only making 0.1 of a gram in that mine. So we
My
don't
buddy
care to
used
do
to say
that.
you're trading dollars for dollars.
Exactly. So we have no interest in doing that. We could have been mining the second that we bought this project and been in full production. We're doing the hard work to really maximize value. We're being very conservative, Allan, because we don't want to be an example of what not to do when you're starting out a company. So we're playing everything very safe. We do intend to produce gold out of the project in the near term. I just don't know what that looks like, what the size is going to look like, what the number of ounces will be, and really I can't even project those numbers because our technical report, even though the resource and reserves that are used that were used in 2011 pre-feasibility study, sorry, the reserves and resources on the property are derived from a 2011 pre-feasibility study that is no longer considered current. So we don't actually have any current reserves nor resources. We have historical of both. And I guess theoretically we don't have any reserves at the moment, but we certainly know that we have material right in front of us that we can very likely extract and process. But because we don't have the current reserve base, we won't be able to give production forecasts. We'll
I
just
can
say,
tell
hey guys, we just poured a bunch of gold.
I can
I've
tell
been trained.
you've been trained you've
Yes.
been trained in the pre-public realm of getting everything looked at with a microscope. But let's take the
My lawyer gave me a
microscope.
big slap on the wrist. But yes, we were just put that disclaimer out there.
We can don't even have to pay attention to any of the historical work. We can physically look at what's on the ground. You've got a leach pad there where there's gold to be extracted from that leach pad. Beside
Yeah.
that, you got a stockpile material that can then make its way to the leach pad. and
Mhm.
you've got an ADR plant on the property project to get that gold.
Yeah, we've got full we've got two wells actually, 375 gallons per day, I believe we can extract, or gallons per minute. Ian would know the number better than I, but 375 GPM, gallons per minute. Yeah, we can take out a lot of water. We've also got a substation, got a fuel farm on site. We're ready to rock if and when we do decide to. Um, and I think Ian's got a really cool quote on our website that because of all of that infrastructure, even if we're just a pure exploration company and not looking at the production, I think it says we can go from drill bit to doré bars faster than 99% of our competitors. And I think that's really, really neat because we genuinely can. We've got everything sunk in, the capital is already sunk. Let's say we go find a 300,000 ounce oxide deposit a mile down the road within our property. We just permit the pit. So you're basically permitting a quarry, trucking that all over to the Borealis proper site, and that is a significantly easier endeavor than permitting all the other things that go along with that process, right?
Yeah, well, that some of the things that take a long time to bring a mine into production these days is permitting, funding, building, and you're ready to roll. You got it all coming out of the gate. You
Yeah.
don't have to go and pay all that capex and to get rolling and take all that time to go through the permitting and the costs. And so
And we don't have to take on the killer of juniors, which is debt. Um, unless we need to in the future, we're nervous of we don't want to get down that road. We'd much rather um, either produce cash ourselves from the operations or potentially issue equity in the future. But I'm quite scared of debt, to be honest with you, and I think that that's a smart way to think when you've got a single asset and not a humongous balance sheet, right?
well, your fear of debt is kind of why I'm so excited about the price of gold. The United States is in a death spiral of debt that I think is going to cause the world to go back on a gold standard. And when they do that, I think gold goes up a whole lot higher. And your timing is sort of perfect, Kelly. Gold is making new record highs throughout this year so far, and I appreciate your look on debt there because it can be a killer for any mining company.
Across, like, even look at Victoria Gold, they were yeah, called that's called on that after one mistake, and the same thing really happened with Griffin Gold. They had a boiler blow up, and the debt just comes at you so quickly when all of a sudden you can't pay the bills, right?
Yep.
And it can crush companies. Although it can be a non-dilutive way to finance things if you structure it right.
But
And
even if you had to go to the market for some of that, because you've got the ADR plant there, you've got all the permits, what kind of capex would you need, to really crank things up? That's,
well, for
most
us, very
companies,
very little, Alan. Like very little money to
most
get us going.
project financings, you're looking at 200 billion and plus, 200 million to a billion and plus.
Yeah.
You're talking here about a few million.
Yep. That's a realistic number. Very, very, very little compared to anything else out there. Because it's
Okay.
done. It's already paid for. Like, we acquired the I think we wrote down when we acquired the project, we wrote down a number of assets because we switched from USA GAAP accounting to IFRS accounting. The It's really, anyways, so we had to do a number of write downs of assets. So we wrote off like $28 million of assets, most of which were equipment. So I think the replacement cost, we did a rough calculation for what we have on site, would be in the order of 60 to $70 million US to replace that ADR, to replace all the substation infrastructure, the wells, all that stuff. Not to mention the resource base, all the drilling that was done, all the geophysics that was done, all the geochemistry that was done. Yeah, we bought this thing for very little money. I think we're gonna open. Oh, we are open right now. Let's see where the stock opened. um, let's
Just
see.
open. Trade anything yet?
Should have 65 cents. Okay, so we're doing
Wow.
well. Anyways, that's really exciting. That's the first trade, 9:30 a.m. Go
Perfect.
BoGo. Anyways, yeah,
And
we're
by the
still
way, you did
under that all that value in terms of market cap, let alone cash, let alone our board, let alone our plan for the future.
most of your, by the way, you raised a heck of a lot of money as a private company in a really bad market. And you
Mhm.
did that at like 45 or 50 cents, most of it.
50 cents for the vast majority of our financings. That's the price that Sprott played, a bunch of institutions played, I played, in like we all, yeah, that's our financing price in the past. I hope that number's behind us and moving on up.
Well, and I know the what Rob McEwen looks at, and really fortunate that we got Waterton out completely from the stock, because they have been an anchor in other companies. And now we've got a great guy in Rob McEwen as part of our team.
Absolutely.
And I do say our because um, Borealis is a sponsor, and I'm a shareholder, and I'm also do some consulting work for the company. So that's why I say our team.
Hey,
And
you're part of the team, buddy.
yeah, and I'm really pleased to be you and Ian and Andreas. You guys came from sort of the Detour Lake Mafia. I'm going to start calling you guys, and now you've done great things beyond Detour Lake, all of you, and now you're putting your brains together to build Borealis into a winner.
That's it.
Did I forget? Did we forget anything, Kelly? I know you got to run here pretty soon.
No, I think that's great, Alan. That was a really nice rundown. I'm glad to have Ian on as well, and we'll do it again. We'll have some news, I hope, out in the coming weeks, and we'll absolutely go through that together and update the market on what's going on.
We're going to do a series of these folks because I think not only is it important to have a great story, you got to be out there. These days, investors are pulled in all kinds of different directions. In order to keep their attention, you got to keep the news going, and you got to keep telling your story to be top of the mind for investors. You guys
Yeah,
have a fantastic story, Kelly. I think it's only going to get better as you do more work. So, and I love that you guys are committed to telling the story and using social media and digital marketing to help get the story out there, because I think that's an important pillar these days.
I totally agree.
All righty. You have any closing
Cool.
comments, Kelly?
Let's go BOGO on the
BoGo,
TSX
baby.
Venture as of right now. 3 minutes ago, we started trading. So thanks, Alan. Appreciate it. I got to jump on some phone calls here.
Okay,
Thanks, Ian.
I'm gonna
Oh,
close it
great.
off.
Yeah.
All
So
right. Thanks, guys.
thank you,
Oh,
guys. There you go, folks, in Borealis Mining with the stock symbol BOGO, BOGO. You've got a company that's been set up for success from being a private company with a great project that attracted a strong board of directors, a strong team of management, strong and some of the best, well, the best investors in the mining space, legends. And as always, my shows are for information purposes only. Do your homework, speak with your financial advisor, take a look at their website. They're a sponsor. I work with them. I'm biased, but I only get biased because I'm so pumped about the project. On that note, have a great day, and we'll talk to you soon.